Greetings, friends. Oz here, broadcasting to you through space and time from planet Oz to talk about this cleverly titled topic. So, UFOs are everywhere now. Are they a threat? Now, when I say everywhere, I don't mean that there's necessarily more visitation or less or whatever. I don't know the math on that. But when I say everywhere, I mean they're in the news now. There are stories seemingly every other day. There's another story about what's going on in mainstream news. This is something that fans of the topic have been waiting for. I'm one of them, have been waiting many years, some of us believing we would never see such a thing, but here it is. Here it is. I can't believe we are here. I really can't believe where we are on this topic right now. When I was an idealistic younger person, I was confident that I was going to see disclosure in my lifetime, but as the years went on, I have had kind of resigned to the idea that no, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to see it, not this time around, but that's changed. I was wrong because it is now coming out. It is now everywhere. And in the United States, where I reside when I'm on planet Earth, we're about to get this big UFO report, So that's going to be interesting. People don't know what it's going to be. Is it going to be big? Are we even going to get to see it? What is it going to say? There's a lot of speculation about it, but it's amazing that it's even happening. It's an incredible time. We are living in an incredible time when it comes to this issue, and there are profound implications. But based on all of those years of following this, I'm familiar with some things that might come out that are things that people will use to possibly, if they're afraid, make the case that we should be worried that this is a threat. So I'm going to take many years of studying this topic from a million different directions and discuss three things that might come out of that people who are fearful about these revelations might glom onto or cling to and focus on the fear and focus on making a case for themselves in their own minds of this being a threat. And those three things are pilots who have engagements and end up lost, the arming of nuclear weapons, and the so-called alien abductions. So these are things that, they might bubble up as this topic gets taken more and more seriously, and they might really turn into a threat. So, or a perception of a threat. I want to make sure I'm emphasizing that. I'm talking about the perceived threat, and that my aim is to balance it a little bit with a little bit of data here that might help. Now, one thing I want to mention is that I've been traveling with these UFO people on internet forums and things like that for a long time, and I have noticed over the years that there is a trend toward dismissiveness of panic. And of course, the panic is rooted in stories like Orson Welles doing his War of the Worlds radio broadcast and people going into panic. But that was a long time ago, and we have come a long way. And so it is fair to an extent that people say, I think we can handle it, I think we're good. But these are people who are into it. They're familiar with the idea. They've had time to sort of process it, and so they're like, oh, we can handle it. We can take it. Disclose. Just tell us. Why don't you just tell us? Well, in my view, I feel like that is underestimating the amount of fear that some people might find with this. It is a paradigm shifting thing. It is a big change, and it is very exciting. And we want it to be a good thing, and we want disclosure to be smooth. And we don't want any panic. We don't want any fear. We want this to be good. So these people going through their everyday life, it's like there are so many people that this is not even anywhere on their radar. They don't even think about that. It's like UFOs, and they're going and they're doing their thing. And good for them, that's fine. But if this stuff really is starting to bubble up in the media now, and the next thing you know, we're going to get this report, and who knows, it might, I don't know. Things seem to be snowballing, and that could mean that we could reach a critical point at somewhere along here where it really does, the idea really does take hold, and people start to understand that this really is not the giggle topic that it's always been. This is real. And so for people going from not anywhere on their consciousness, anywhere in their space, to from that to bam, it's real, then that might be hard for people. So I think it's worth, let's be considerate of everybody in this process, because again, we want it to go smoothly. So these threats, let's talk about these specific threats and what this is all about. So firstly, pilots being shot down. There are accounts of this. There are actually many, and it's important to consider the broader context, and that's what I want to bring with this film. The broader context in this case being things like the Nimitz, the aircraft carrier. A bunch of pilots are now on every radio show talking about their experiences and what they ran into there. Pilots in general are coming out more, both from the military and from the private sector, feeling more confident, I guess, to tell their stories publicly, so they're sharing more and more about this. And yes, we're finding out about incidents where we may have lost pilots in doing this, scrambling and chasing these UFOs. So when we're talking about Nimitz, if you follow that story at all, basically pilots from an aircraft carrier and what they saw, well, the military talk about this a lot. We're buzzed constantly. Our nuke sites are buzzed, our aircraft carriers are buzzed, our bases in other countries are buzzed. And by buzzed, I mean we're visited, we're looked at, we're checked out. We're not shot at, we're not destroyed. And that actually gets to the core of something that's really intuitive. Just to start off the bat here, people say this all the time. Well, if they wanted to destroy us, they could do it like that, and they could have done it at any moment since we were apes. I believe that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. So this is intuitive. If we are really dealing with a technology as advanced as our officials are now acknowledging, then certainly their weapons are going to be vastly superior. And if they wanted to wipe us out, they could have done it many, many times. They could have done it any time. So if they didn't do it before, why would they want to do it now? There's that kind of intuitive aspect of it. But when it comes to these pilots, they're talking about all these buzzings, and all of these buzzings don't seem to result in attack. In fact, I have never heard an account of a UFO visiting one of our nuke sites and hurting somebody, or firing on one of our ships out in the water, or firing or attacking an airplane, even one that's pursuing it, at least not in an aggressive way. What I have heard and read, and there is speculation about, is that perhaps the situation, the encounter might get too close, and I don't know. Are we talking about a self-defense situation there? And this isn't, I'm not putting this on our military pilots. I'm not saying that they aggressed. I'm not saying they attacked. I'm saying a dicey situation is created if you scramble a plane and it chases after a highly advanced piece of technology. You don't know what's going to happen. Some say that even just getting a plane too close to one of these things can result in the plane failing. And this kind of jives with what people have been saying for years and years and years, that when they were driving their car and a UFO showed up, the car stalled, electronics just went out, everything stopped working. So it makes sense also that if you fly a plane too close to one of these things, that could happen too. So what I'm saying is, it's not impossible that there has been an aggressive first strike from a UFO, but it doesn't make sense that way. What makes a lot more sense is that the more fearful entities are going to be the ones who are more likely to overstep against an unknown and get into trouble. And again, this wouldn't be the pilots doing this. They're following orders, and the people who are giving the orders don't have all the information, and they don't know how unknown this thing is that they're dealing with. So anyway, this pilot thing, I don't doubt that that there are real incidents and that we've lost not just us as in one country or this country, but all over the world. There's been incidents like this. So anyway, pilots and their interaction, their engagements, and what has happened there, that might bubble up, and perhaps your friends or your relatives might be sort of inclined toward fearfulness, and when they hear these stories about the pilots, they might get worried. So there is some context there. That's some context. Not saying it never happened, but I'm just trying to appeal to your intuitive reason in sorting through this to help us all sort of like stabilize the reality among the general population when this really, really comes out. So anyway, so that's pilots in engagements being shot down. So the second one was they're activating our nukes. They activate nukes. There is a story about this. It's from the Cold War, and it happened in the Soviet Union. And so we have the stories about, or this story about a missile site in the Soviet Union being buzzed, being visited, and the nukes were activated. And so what people have done, I've heard this fearful rhetoric already. I've seen it written and online, and people are starting to say this. It's oh well, they wanted to start a nuclear war. They wanted to get us into a nuclear war. They wanted to, launch the Russian missiles, and then we would retaliate and we would wipe ourselves out. Well, again, let's go back to earlier when we talked about how they could have annihilated us easily since the dawn of man. They don't need nukes. These nukes are very primitive to them. This is I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a motive out there. Maybe someone understands the picture of this agenda, but I don't understand it. If killing us was the goal, there are much better ways to do it. And if they wanted us off the planet, I don't imagine why they would want us off a planet that is now riddled with nuclear fallout, and basically everything is destroyed and whatever. What do you gain from that? It doesn't make any sense. But here's the context. So here is some context. There is that one story about the Soviet Union, but consider that in the context of I think it's Hastings is the researcher who did the book UFOs and Nukes and the documentary UFOs and Nukes that has all of these military people, retired military people, talking about their time served on the nuke sites, and there are many stories of visitation by UFOs. And there's a ton of them in the work of Hastings. Definitely recommend checking him out about the UFOs and nukes specifically, that topic. But yeah, so there are all many stories about this, and they're ongoing. We only get to hear about the old ones. People don't really start talking about it until they're retired, and until it's like there's really nothing that can be done. And why would these retired military people who have done their service and could just live a nice life with their friends, why do they come forward? Perhaps even in violation of a decades-old order not to say anything, and they're coming out and they're saying it. Why are they doing it? Because, as they say it, this isn't me, what they say is because we feel like the people deserve to know. At a certain point, their allegiance to the general population of the country which they protected for so many years trumps an order that they come to find dubious. Why am I not supposed to tell anybody? I think this is a big deal that we're being visited at our nuke sites. I think people should know that. So they come forward and they tell the story, and that's the reasoning that they give for why they do it. So, in all of these stories, the nukes are disarmed. disarmed. Story after story after story after story after story. They are disarmed. In mass, sometimes. You know, these guys will talk about that they do service on these missiles, and they'll say, you know, it's very, very rare that even more than one missile is offline. As soon as a missile's offline, we fix it. Well, after they get a visit, 10 missiles go down, 20 go down, 50 go down. So they lose this whole, temporarily. They get it back online. It's not like these things are melted. They're not disintegrated. They're not destroyed. They're disarmed. And when this is happening over and over and over again, let's go back for a second to the idea they could annihilate us. They could have annihilated us a long time ago. They didn't do it. So maybe that might indicate that not only are they not interested in annihilating us, maybe they would go so far as to be interested in making sure we don't annihilate ourselves. So, yeah, what else could we conclude? I don't know. I mean, it's like it does seem like a friendly idea to check and see, can we disarm these things? Yes, we can. Oh, they've updated, the humans have updated their technology. They changed the way they do their nukes. All right, well, we're going to pay them another visit. Another visit, another scan, another, whatever. They capture the data that they want about our tech, try to disarm it. It disarms again. Okay, once again, they've updated their technology, but once again, we are ready to stop it if they try to use it against each other. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't understand exactly why else this would be happening. But anyway, the point is, after you get enough of those type of events, turn them off, 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 intuitively for the point of making sure they can. Then there's one incident in the Soviet Union where the nukes are armed. That sounds to me like an accident. That sounds to me like something in the natural course of doing this scan, test. Can we turn it off? Do we understand the technology? Can we turn it off? We got to make sure we can turn it off. Oops, we turned it on. And no, they did not. They didn't launch the missiles. Didn't start World War III. It went. Rather than in the United States where all of these stories talk about how they go into a mode of disarmed, they go into a disarmed mode. So the story over in the Soviet Union was they went into armed mode. So they shifted mode. They were armed, but they were not fired. And so I think this is just years and years of collecting all of these things. And when I hear this Soviet Union story, it is clearly anomalous. It does not fit the profile of every other incident with these nukes that is described, and so consequently, that makes me dubious. That the intention was to start a war. I believe the intention was the same as it has always been: see if we understand their tech and see if we can disarm it. And oops, there is a little bit of trial and error. If there weren't trial and error, they wouldn't even bother visiting at all. If they just knew everything we did and they could just read it from outer space, then wouldn't they do that? Well, we know how to disarm it, we're good. The fact that they come down here and do these tests, to me, suggests that they kind of need to. So there you go, the arming of the nukes, the pilots under attack, and so the third one that I mentioned that I was going to discuss is the so-called alien abduction events. And there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have told these stories over the decades of their encounters and being taken aboard and having tests done on them and things like that. And these poor people have been ridiculed all of these years and marginalized for telling these stories, and look where we are now. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that the disclosures we've seen so far confirms any of this, but a big reason to not believe them all of these years for those who have not is because of the lack of any official support that there is even a presence at all. And now that presence is showing up in the media, and we're getting more and more, we're getting fed more and more information, and it is all pointing to this being true. So if it turns out that this is true, that this represents some complete other that we don't understand, then it's probably going to be necessary for us all to revisit what we think about these abduction stories, so-called, and whether they might have more veracity, and we should think more about that. But the point is, when people have these experiences and they recount them, there is often stories about tests being done on them. There's often stories about them being very uncomfortable. There's stories about them being probed, you know. So this stuff also has been going around for years, and but you know, a key aspect to the misery when people are recounting these stories is, without question, fear. They are very, very, very afraid when this is going on. They go, you know, in a lot of cases, they never even thought about a UFO in their life, and all of a sudden they're on board and they're getting tested and they are terrified. So, well, it can be unpleasant, and this has then been often discussed as, well, they have some sort of devious, nefarious agenda, and they are taking people against their will, and they are doing these tests, and we're being treated like animals. But again, the stories don't involve malicious efforts to harm. The stories don't involve torture. The Fire in the Sky Travis Walton story, if you saw the movie, don't believe the ending. The ending is the one part of the movie that is really not at all accurate to the story. The rest is very accurate, but when it gets to this thing where he's on the ship, it's not like that. It wasn't him crawling out of the thing and all this, and he was stored in this. That's not it. He was on a table in like a medical kind of room, and remembers, you know, maybe some tests walking around the ship. He doesn't remember very much, but he does not remember what was shown in that movie. That was Hollywood. So anyway, but the point is, they are scared, and they do have these tests, and they do, they feel they're being kept against their will, and all of this stuff. So, all right, so what about that? Well, I would suggest this. If the topic in general, now being taken more seriously by the media, now being treated more seriously by the military and these disclosures and government officials, and ultimately going to be treated more and more seriously by the general public as more of this goes on, then we have to think, if all of that awareness and all of that excitement, curiosity, worry, in the case we're talking about with this film, if all of this leads to a place where we do come to believe wholeheartedly and understand that we are being visited by something else, then of course we're going to revisit these abduction stories, but then what I'm going to suggest is that if we are going to go that far, if we're going to consider the presence a real thing, and that's going to lead us to consider their stories about what has happened to them as a real thing, then why would we stop there, stop short of also taking into account what the people are told about why this is happening and what's happening to them? Because if you just kind of gloss over it and you're just paying attention to little tidbits you're catching here and there, you might hear about abductions, and all you'll hear about is someone was taken on a craft and someone stuck something up their butt and they were terrified and it was horrible, and that might be all you hear about it. But in fact, these stories, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them now, very often they go into significantly more detail than just the probing and the testing aspects of this. They do say that, but then they say, yeah, and then after some of this testing, I was given a tour of the ship. They showed me the controls. I could see that we were out in space. They were talking about it. And then they told me many of them say, why they are doing this. It's not that they wanted them to be terrified. They didn't want them to be terrified, and they didn't want them coming back here and telling everybody of their experience with terror and all that. So it's kind of a fear management thing. It's kind of like that room at the some places where it's like, okay, well, you've just had a crazy experience. So before you go out in the outside world, everyone who's in here and just experienced that, we're gonna go into this room. First, we're gonna be in this room. This is like the chill out room, get yourself back in order again, and then you go out into the public. So after you've had this experience and you've been scared and whatever, then they're taken around the ship. This is what they say, taken around the ship, shown things, told things. And what they are told about what this happens, why is this happening, is that it's coming from a positive place. It's about understanding us. It's about learning about us. And I'm not saying this is true. I don't know if it's true, but I am saying it's consistent with the idea that they would deactivate our nukes. So all of these things seem to indicate more of a care and a concern about us. The testing, not comfortable, but when we are fully aware of what is going on, let's say you go to the doctor and you got something that you want looked at, you end up having uncomfortable tests sometimes. You end up getting poked and prodded and probed by your doctor, And is that comfortable? No. Can it be scary? Yeah. And why does all that happen? Why is all that necessary? For a better good, a bigger good, a bigger picture of your health and helping you. So put up with a little discomfort, and otherwise the outcome is good. So is that what's happening? I don't know, but I'm just saying this is what they're told, and it does match what's going on. And if the lights in the sky are now becoming officially true as to the presence of something else, and we're going to believe their stories of abduction, why don't we believe what they're told? Why don't we at least consider the reasons that are being given? So there you have it. Those three, at least, potential talking points about threat. It's, I think, going to be important, and increasingly more important as the topic is more and more out there and more people are accepting it. This might be a way to be a little bit vigilant about how the rhetoric is shaping, how the narrative is shaping. Let's be very careful about the threat and the fear. And of course, it's an unknown that I don't claim to fully know everything about. Could there be some negativity? Could there be some nefariousness or something like that? Sure. I don't know. But I'm just saying that, when you amass all of this stuff together, the picture painted does not look like that. It looks like this is going to be a very, very good thing. I, for one, am incredibly excited. It doesn't seem like open contact is necessarily right around the corner or anything like that. I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it. I'm really optimistic about it. I'm not worried that we're going to get annihilated or it's going to be bad. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'll be the first one vaporized. Who knows? We'll see. But I don't think so. I think we're all right. So this is just a little food for thought. Things to keep in mind. Just put that under your hat in case things really snowball in a hurry and the panics. I don't panic, I think would be too big of a word. We're pretty mature, but certainly fear. Certainly a level of fear and a concern about a threat. So take what resonates out of that. Thank you for watching, friends. I'll see you on the next one, the next visit to planetOZ.